Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Sencha Ext JS, What's Coming in version 7.6, hosted by Sencha. My name is Raj for you. I'm a marketing manager at Sencha and will be moderating today's webinar. I am pleased to introduce today's presenter, Marc Gusmano, senior sales engineer, and we also have a product team on this call. Vajra is a product lead and also Sachin, a product manager. Before I hand the mic over to Marc to kick off the webinar, I would like to take a moment to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on demand on the BrightTalk platform. Additionally, we will host a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If at any time during the webinar you have a question, please submit it via questions panel. Marc, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Raj, and welcome everyone. We will be talking about what's new in the latest upcoming version of Sencha Ext JS version 7.6. And we'll also answer any questions you may have about this version. So we'll get started by talking about the main areas that are coming in 7.6. As some of you know, we have continued to add functionality to the modern toolkit portion of Ext JS to bring it to parity with the classic toolkit. And so this release includes some of those capabilities. One in particular is related to the grid. And we'll take a look at that, actually a couple of them, and also some slider field improvements that will bring us even closer to parity with the modern toolkit and the classic toolkit. So specifically, the additions and improvements are highlighted here. First thing I'll talk about is the expanded grid capabilities we have in the modern toolkit. We've added a new filter type called list to give you a list of items if you happen to be filtering on a particular column. So you may have a list of names or categories, and instead of just having a text box where you have to type that in for a filter, we now give you the ability to programmatically create a selectable list, very much like a combo box, to allow you to use that filter type. And I'll show you that in a moment here. We have also created stateful capabilities for the modern grid, which means that if you, for example, move or resize a column and refresh the page, because we're now tracking that state, you won't lose that resizing or that move of the column. So that's a highly requested feature for the modern grid. Also, we've enhanced the modern component, or the modern toolkit slider component. We've added a vertical option so that now, in addition to horizontal sliders, you can have vertical sliders in your application. We've done work to improve and bring up to version 7.6 Sencha Command, our command line tool, and our open tooling NPM offering. So you'll be able to use the latest and greatest version with those two tools. We've also taken the co-working application, which is a really nice sample application that allows you to see what it's like to build a desktop, a mobile, perhaps even a tablet device types within an application. We've upgraded the co-working application from a source code point of view to use our NPM-based open tooling, and also to use the latest version, 7.6. That makes a really nice starter application for building what we call universal applications. So let's go into a little bit more detail on some of these new improvements in 7.6. As I said, we've focused on the modern toolkit in this release, and in particular, one of the things we've added is the ability to support a vertical slider. So probably the easiest way is just to show you this. So this is the kitchen sink application and the upgrade to it for 7.6. It's not available yet. We're getting close. It should be within weeks that we will have the official general availability. But once we do, the kitchen sink will have an improved slider example that now, as you can see, has a vertical slider. So you're now able to do things with the slider in parity with what you could do in the classic toolkit. If I look at the details here, you'll notice that this is a very simple improvement from a usability point of view. I simply have to set the vertical property to true. It's false by default. So these are all without the vertical property, as you can see here. And the slider field X type here has a vertical true config. So that's the slider component and its capabilities. There is a slider already in the classic toolkit. So just to remind you, I mean, here's that basic vertical slider that's been and still exists in the classic toolkit. So again, bringing these things to parity is one of our in every release, we become closer and closer. Within the modern grid, we've added a new list filter type that you can use to give you the ability to choose from a filter a list of items that you supply programmatically. So typically what a filter that uses a list does is it figures out all of the unique values within that particular column. So if we're in the first name column, and this one obviously has a one-to-one correspondence with unique names. But if we had, several hundred Michaels and, more than one Jim, we would boil that down to the unique items here. And so instead of typing it, you can just simply select it from a list. This list is a programmatic list, so you can do really whatever you want to do with it. But the most typical use case is the subset of items in that column that are unique. Again, let's take a quick look at this. We have, in this particular case, the documentation page. So in the modern toolkit for version 7.6, we will have a new object or a new class called Ext Grid Filters Menu List. And it is a list X type. So documentation will be there, examples as we always provide with all of the documentation. There will also be a kitchen sink item to give you some code that you can copy and paste into your own code. So several items in this release that are getting us, as I said, closer to parity with the classic toolkit. Another item that was highly requested is stateful columns. So what we mean by that is that you won't lose the capability of holding on to anything you might have changed while you're using the grid, because now state is maintained even between refreshes. So to give you an idea what I mean by that, let's go over here to an example. And in this particular case, let's say I make the first name column a lot bigger. If I were to refresh this page, the first name column would continue to stay at this size. So that's the whole idea. The whole idea is now statefulness exists in the modern toolkit grid, and your ability to take advantage of that means I don't have to write stateful code as many customers had to write in the past. So another exciting improvement in the modern grid. All of these examples will be in the kitchen sink, not only the vertical slider field, the grid examples that I've shown you, and all of these examples will be available, or all of the functionality will be available to our two classes of tooling, to Ext, which is the NPM open tools based environment, and Sencha Command. So a new version of Sencha Command 7.6 will be available. and a new version of Ext, which will support the SDK that we're announcing here, the 7.6 version of the SDK. And I just put a little example of using Sencha command here. Again, 7.6. This was a build of 7.6. The final minor version number is still to be determined. So Ext, Sencha command, and the SDK will all appear at general availability of new version 7.6. Beyond enhancements to the SDK and the modern toolkit, we've also done some work with quality improvements, bug fixes. So when the release notes for Ext JS 7.6 come out, we will, as we always do, document all the improvements. I'll highlight a few of them here, but in like fashion, we will have a version of the upgrade advisor down the road from the general availability, which will utilize those quality improvements and the new things that are in 7.6 to aid you to upgrade to 7.6. Few things that are in the list of improvements. We've done some improvement to the selection model for virtual stores in the modern toolkit. We've improved some of the performance that customers have seen with lists on Windows touch devices. So some of these get pretty specific, but needed to be addressed. In the classic toolkit, we have support for screen readers, the JAWS screen reader in particular. We had an issue with the tree panel and grid components and the consistency of the JAWS interface, the screen reader interface. We've fixed that. Some drag and drop issues in the HTML editor when people would drag and drop from a tree node. Fixed that one. And there were some drawing misalignment issues, some aesthetic issues with the filter bar when we were displaying an Ext JS application on 4K screens. So as technology improves, as we get better and better monitors, as operating systems improve, we are addressing the issues that come up because of those new releases. On the tooling side, we've addressed some issues that were caused by a couple of new technologies coming out. First off, the closure compiler, the compiler that we use as we're doing builds with Sencha command, we've upgraded that compiler to take advantage of some of the new Java syntax, or JavaScript syntax, I should say. There's a lot of new JavaScript syntax that has come along over the last couple of years, and it's been kind of rapidly continuing. So we're able to keep up with that with a new upgraded closure compiler. There was an issue with Sencha command with the Mac OS environment and the Monterey release of Mac OS. So we've fixed that, and now 7.6 has full support for Mac OS Monterey. There were Ext enhancements that we built in, few things that customers have found that we've added to the product. Again, Ext is the open tooling version of our tools. And in like fashion with previous releases, we will release the SDK, and then relatively immediately after that, some period of time after that, we will also roll out support for all of our tools. The main ones being Sencha Architect, Sencha Themer. Sencha command will happen immediately with the SDK. It's the basic tool we use. The upgrade advisor, as I mentioned, will also add support for migrating to version 7.6, and anything else that might be related to a new version will come and be added to the 7.6 release in general. As I mentioned, 7.6 is in process. We're in final QA. We are working to get things out. I've been told that we're looking at a matter of weeks, which could be the end of this month or the beginning of next month. We want to be sure and know when we're going to release it before we give an official date. but it is close to being available. Any current customers can log on to the support portal today and see that we have been building and providing nightlies for 7.6. So if you are eager to take a look at some of these new capabilities and you want to see how it's going to affect your application, you can do that. Those aren't absolutely general availability ready, but they're indeed feature ready. So you could go ahead and take a look at these new capabilities today. If this is your first time looking at Ext JS, we just want to remind people how to acquire it. Probably the biggest thing you can do is download a 30-day free trial. Currently, the free trial is for 7.5.1, the version that is in general availability at the moment. But the moment we turn the switch on for general availability for 7.6, this 30-day free trial will appear within our environment. So getting a trial is pretty simple. It's going to our evaluate page. You get everything for trial. You get the SDK, you get Sencha command, you get Sencha architect, basically all of the tooling and the SDK to support the evaluation of Ext JS. It's a simple download trial, and we really tried to make it easy to get started. So once you download either the zip version or the Sencha command version or the NPM or open tooling version, we have a rather detailed getting started page to get you up and running as quickly as possible. Within minutes of downloading the product, you'll have a built template application. So it's a real easy experience to get started with Ext JS. I just mentioned the getting started guides. These are really, really helpful to understand how you acquire the tools. As you can see here, getting started with NPM goes through how you install Ext in using NPM, so more of the modern tooling capabilities. Every step along the way will give you guidance so that you can get up and running very quickly. We also have a resource center that is chock full of learning material. It's this menu right here on Sencha.com. What I do is I just go to resources and just click the left side here. As you can see here, we have categorized all of the information we have in the resource center by product. So if I clicked on Ext JS, we have getting started videos, we have white papers, we have webinars that you can quickly get at anything we've done from a webinar point of view. For example, this webinar will be available on the webinars tab once we have it finished and recorded. Plenty of examples, data sheets, case studies. Our blog is a very active tool we use to announce new things or to educate or to enlighten people on certain aspects of the product. And we continue to offer virtual classroom-based training. So we really recommend getting started with the product by learning what its capabilities are. And we will upgrade our training to include features and capabilities of 7.6 so that, if you're doing some work with the modern toolkit and you're using the grid, that will be incorporated. So you've got a lot of avenues to understand the product. We continue to add new capabilities to the kitchen sink. So this is a great resource to find out what capabilities our components have, broken down into two different kitchen sinks, one for the modern toolkit and one for the classic toolkit. So a lot of the capabilities we see in version 7.6 appear in the modern toolkit. So for example, under grids here, we're going to have some new kitchen sink items to address the filter. We'll have a new kitchen sink item to address the vertical scroll bar, and everything new will continue to be added to the kitchen sink. As I said, we're currently at version 5.1, but the moment Ext JS 6.0 is live, going to examples.sencha.com will get you to version 7.6. Follow us on Twitter. We have a Twitter account. We announce things like this particular webinar, or talk about events or things that are happening with the product. We also have a YouTube channel, which is chock full of different training videos, webinar-like materials. There's something called the Sencha Cafe that has been running in Europe that you may be interested in taking a look at, training-oriented. There are very, very specific things in here, an overview of Sencha Architect, various things that I think you'd find helpful. So our YouTube channel is a good place to go as well. And we also have something that is really growing in popularity, which is our Discord server. So Discord is an environment to allow for connecting with people, chatting back and forth. Many of our MVPs are on our Discord server, and it is a great place to even just listen as people are discussing issues, maybe an issue that they're trying to figure out with one of the toolkits. The Sencha developers and engineers are also there, so some informal conversations with our engineers can possibly be had. Some insight into new products, new features. A lot of that discussion happens, especially as we're planning a new version, the next version of Ext JS, for example. Just general awareness. This has become really the hub of communication activity for Ext JS. So I'd encourage you to discover that yourself and get involved in those discussions. So that's the summary of what I have from a new product point of view. We're excited to get the product out, as I said, probably within the month. As soon as we have a date, probably a blog will come out or some sort of general messaging to let you know that 7.6 is there. Or follow the support portal. Once 7.6 is generally available, it will be at the top of the list. So with that, I will defer back to my team, see what questions we have, and answer those for you.
Wonderful, Mark. Thank you for the presentation. It looks like we have a few questions that have been submitted. If you are still with us and have a question, please submit it via questions panel. Mark, we have a few questions. I'm going to get started on that.
Okay, great.
All right. The first question we have, how can you say that stateful width in modern grid is a new feature? Works just fine in our projects currently built with Ext JS 7.5 version.
Maybe there's certain aspects that we're addressing that weren't addressed, and certainly whoever asked that question, if you want to explore that further, I'd be happy to do that with you. As a matter of fact, for anyone who has any particular questions and might like to explore it further, I'm going to put the starter slide up here with my email address. Feel free to email me. And for example, I'd love to understand in what way state is working for you. There were aspects of state that definitely were not working before version 7.6. So please just contact me and we can talk about that specifically.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark, for that. So the next question we have, if the phone column is not there on the next refresh, because the user choose a different column setup, but then it adds it again on the next refresh, after that, will the width and position settings be remembered from where it was lost in the grid?
Well, this sounds like a specific use case. I'd love to see it in more detail. Something like this is really good to spark a conversation on, maybe in our Discord server or with me specifically. And one of the tools that we have out there that a lot of you probably know about that really help in the communication of a specific use case like this would be Sencha Fiddle. So I'd love to see what you're trying to do and maybe have a simple Sencha fiddle. And, you know, if you feel something's missing, I'm not sure in the essence of that question, if you're asking if state management covers what you're trying to do. That's what it sounds like to me. So we can take a look at that. Also, although not available with Sencha Fiddle yet, we do, as I mentioned, have the 7.6 nightly builds available on the support portal. So if you are an active support portal member, simply go over to Ext JS under downloads and you'll see nightlies. So you can frankly pull down a close to GA version of 7.6 and try it yourself. So either one of those, again, contact me if you want to dive into that, but plenty of options to get questions like that answered. And again, I think the Discord server for a lot of you would be an ideal place to at least connect to see the kind of conversations that are going on, because there's some great minds, some great MVP minds there, and a lot of good questions and answers happening.
Great. Thanks, Mark. The next
Sure.
question we have, is there any new updates on Sencha Architect?
New updates on Sencha Architect. I know generally some of that, but maybe I can defer to one of my team members to maybe give an explanation of what our plans are for Sencha Architect for 7.6 and beyond. Is that something someone on the call can take?
Yes. Hey, Mark. Thanks for posting this question to the product team. Hey, all. This is Vajra from product team. So currently with this 7.6 version, we are releasing 4.3.2 version of Sencha Architect, where our plan is to support only the latest version, that is 7.6, while our engineering team is gearing up to release the next version, that is 4.3.3, which is really having very lightweight features like on-demand download of all the older versions. So that makes Sencha Architect to support all the versions, even going down line in the future. Because this product is loved and used by users from the years, it has been continuously release by release getting heavier. So we were addressing that, and you can expect the next version which supports all the versions. But in current version we'll be releasing, that is with 7.6, there is a release of Sencha Architect 4.3.2 which will support only 7.6.
So that won't be on general availability of 7.6. It'll be some bit of time after GA. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So in summary, the next version of Sencha Architect will support 7.6 only. So if you're using 7.6, you'll have support in Sencha Architect. And the release after that, we've done work to make sure that these continuing releases, which have made Sencha Architect bigger and bigger and bigger, we're doing some re-architecting work to make sure that moving forward, that doesn't become an impediment to using the product. So look for look for the release that supports 7.6 shortly after the GA announcement, and remember it will only support that version, and then the version after will get to that usual cadence of supporting the latest version and everything underneath it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark and Vach, on that.
Yes.
So the next question is the free communication version planned for 7.6? Community version, sorry.
The free community version. Again, I'll ask the product team maybe to comment on that if we have some insight on that.
Not right now. We are still planning on that, but this will not be yet for community.
Okay. So are we considering a 7.6 community edition? Just it won't be available at GA, or we're
not planned as such for now.
Okay. No plans at the moment for providing a community edition of 7.6.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. All right. So is there any news about the issues of Visual Studio Code extension?
The Visual Studio Code extension, which I believe had a name. Does it still have a name? And is it the name I know, or is anybody able to talk specifically about that whole project where we're taking Visual Studio Code? I I would think, unarguably, probably the most popular editor out there for JavaScript. And we're building an extension, a visual extension, beyond what we've already provided in a plugin, to allow you to do drag and drop and coding and frankly things that Architect is doing. So we're working on a project to do that. And again, maybe someone on the product team could fill in the details as to where we are and what to expect.
Yeah. So currently, all these IDE plugins we know because of the latest releases of those plugins or those IDEs, those are broken. So we are working out and checking the efforts on that. So maybe in the upcoming releases, we are planning to make all these plugins up and running.
Okay. So for 7.6, for example, getting the current plugin running is a goal. Yeah.
That is not yet addressed here. Maybe
Right.
we'll use it for the next.
And then what about that the new, I don't know what's been announced and what's not been announced about the work that we're doing with the additional extension to Visual Studio Code for visual editing and things like that. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's one more greatest and most awaited project the engineering team and we are working at, and that's something gonna come in end of this year for the beta users to test it and get back to us. It's something like a lightweight version of Sencha Architect where you can start drag and dropping the components and create your starter application and take it forward coding directly from their runtime. You can even use it on any of the other IDs if you want to code, or if you want to play around with drag and drop, use just this lightweight extension of VS Code extension.
Okay. So current plans are for a beta potentially by the end of the year.
Exactly.
Okay. I think we've done some blogging about this. So look for some more information as we move to the end of the year. And exactly as we just described, it's a lot of functionality that people are used to in Sencha Architect. How far it's going to go and when it's going to get to a certain capability and when and if it ever does everything that Architect does is still a part of the planning and building process. But it's pretty exciting to be getting a product like that will be usable within the most popular editor. So look forward to that. It sounds like later in the year for a possible beta.
Thank you very much, guys. The next question we have, as I understand, Themer is only compatible with Ext JS 7.4. Will there be an updated version suitable for 7.5?
So the question is about Sencha Themer.
That's correct.
So even about support for the current version 7.5 or 7.5.1. Is that a fact, product team? Are there some open issues with 7.5 in Sencha Themer? I'm not aware of them, but that's what it sounds like the question is asking, or has had some problems. I don't know if you have any comments on that, but I know our goal is, once 7.6 is generally available, to make all products available for 7.6. We've talked about Sencha Architect. Certainly Sencha Themer is in that realm. So anything in particular, team, that we know of with Sencha Themer and 7.5?
Yeah, so with 7.6, Sencha Themer should be working with this latest version, and we have already tested that. If there are any issues particularly found for as per the use case, please let us know through support portal.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps you found some sort of a bug or an issue that we need to address. And like anything, the most efficient way for us to be aware of it and to move on it, if it indeed is a bug, is to submit a ticket in the Sencha support portal. That will get our attention. That will get our engineers starting to look at things. And as I said, if it indeed is a bug, we will get that in the mix so that we can make sure that Themer is working consistently.
That's great. Thank you. We have a few more questions here. Will there be any improvements to the modern combo box to bring it on par with classic features? Our users are screaming for autocomplete search and filter capabilities they are used to from classic version.
So the question here is modern toolkit improvements to the combo box to bring that particular component to parity with the classic toolkit combo box. So a little bit on where we're heading in futures. Again, I will defer to the product team if they have any thoughts or if there's been any thinking about that as an improvement.
Yeah. So as always, we keep on doing on all our releases. We always try to bring modern up to the speed of classic. And yes, we are making these modern components which are lightweight, feature rich going forward. Yes. So this will be addressed in the upcoming releases, definitely.
Yeah, and again, to give it has our attention. We know about it, but whoever asked that question, just to give it a little extra oomph, I would put that request or desire in a ticket in the support portal. I know it's not a ticket. I know that's not a bug. You're asking about new features, but once something is in our support ticketing environment and it's a new feature request, it gets categorized as that, and it's you're assured it's going to be considered. And the more we hear about certain issues, the higher they bubble to the top. So it's kind of a practical thing. So, if you can, go ahead and add that feature request as a ticket.
Got it. Thank you, Mark, very much. The next question we have, how can users create a Sencha Fiddle account?
How do users get a Sencha Fiddle account? That's a great question. Since I've had one forever, I don't know exactly what the process is. It used to be related to their forum IDs, but obviously it's changed. Does anybody? I can take that question back to get it answered. But does anybody on the panel know specifically what you need to do?
So right now, they have to go through forum and create an account there. That's where they get into our environment of Sencha, and then with those credentials, they can access the Sencha Fiddle.
Okay, so you still go to the Sencha forum,
right? Where our most of the assets are still alive.
Okay. So I guess it's still the same process. Again, if someone tries to go through that process and is not having success, please email me. I will make sure you get access and get an ID. A Sencha Fiddle account is great. I mean, you can save fiddles. You can, search ones that are out there. It's a great way to do essentially in the cloud Ext JS. So if you haven't used it before, take a look. It's just fiddle.sencha.com. It's a great online cloud-based environment. Also very good for communicating to our support team. If you have an issue or you're trying to understand something, if you can boil down your example to a Sencha Fiddle, it makes it a lot easier for support and our engineering team to answer the specific question you have. So good all around, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. The next question is, what's the best place to find the documentation on Sencha?
Well, the best place in my mind is docs.sencha.com. So two places I go a lot are docs, and even when I type it, it comes up docs.sencha.com. So all of our documentation for every one of our products and every version of our products is here. So you can see Ext JS here. You can see Sencha Test, Sencha Architect, Sencha Themer, Command. If you go in to one of these, for example, I'm in the Ext JS documentation, you'll notice it covers both modern and classic. And I can do searches of only modern, only classic, or both. And not a lot of people know what this down arrow is, but this is every product and every release. So if you're not on 7.5.1, or if you're curious about something that was in 6.0.0, you can go back to the documentation of that version of the product. So pretty robust. Let me go back to 7.5.1, which again is the latest. Within the product, if you, for example, were interested in the grid, the easiest way to get to grid documentation is come up to the search bar. I'm looking at the classic toolkit grid. Click on this, and pretty much all of our documentation follows a very consistent pattern. You'll have the Ext JS name of the object, in this case, or class, ext.grid.panel. You'll have its X type. And then here you'll have a list of all of the configs you can set, all of those, you call them properties if you want. Configs are things that you can programmatically change. Properties are kind of static. So you have all the configs, all the properties, all the methods are things you can call into in that component, all the things you can listen to, all the events. And then for theming, we even include all the variables that are available and all of the mixins that are available. So it's a quite extensive documentation list. You'll pretty usually, especially for the major components, have an inline example that you can run and actually see. And this is a good place to learn as well. So short answer, docs.sencha.com. The other place I go almost every day is examples.sencha.com. Examples.sencha.com is where you can find our kitchen sinks. So I'm here a lot. And the reason I like the kitchen sink as a form of documentation is that once you find something you want to do, let's say, learn about how to build a basic grid, we give you best practices source code. So we don't just say, set this config and set this one and you're ready to go. We show you an MVC or an MVVM best practices set of code. So you'll notice here we have a view, we have a controller or a view controller, and we have a data store and a supporting model. So this is a rather complete example of something simple, just basic grid, but it really tries to reinforce the practices that we've built into the product. So docs.sencha.com, examples.sencha.com. The third place, which I talked about for learning that I like to go to, is this resources page. So resources, and if you're new to Ext JS and it would be helpful to watch a beginner video, these are great. These are a great way to get started with the product. It's a big product. There's a lot to learn, but we've given you a lot of tools to be able to get that learning that you need. So hopefully that's helpful.
Oh, wonderful, Mark. Thank you for good run through.
Sure.
We're just about out of time, but we can take one more question for the day.
Sure.
So when can we expect that Frola Editor is working with Classic Toolkit?
Frola working with the Classic Toolkit?
That's correct.
All right. I'm going to defer to my great team here because I don't know.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the interesting feature I was actually waiting to implement. So usually the cadence how we run is like all the even releases will be with new features and odd releases will be with more of quality improvements. I was actually waiting to get this into 7.6, but it didn't get that much upvotes from the community. So please, if you would like to see this in next 7.8 or kind of stuff, please create support tickets or give upvotes. I might even run a forum request where you would be asked to choose some of the features which you want to see in the next releases. Please vote there so that we product team can pick few of these which community loves to see.
Yeah, and if you're noticing a pattern here, it's communicate with us. We really do listen to what you guys, our customers, would like to see in future versions. And if we don't hear something, then the only thing we can assume is it's not that important. So in this particular case, again, like I said before, if there's a feature or an addition that you feel is very valuable, let us know formally through a ticket. I mean, the ticketing system is supposed to be for bugs, but we can utilize that ticketing system for communicating to us. And sometimes I get a question from people, if I use my tickets to do that, won't I run out of tickets? You will not run out of tickets. And if anybody runs out of tickets, let me know. I have not seen that ever happen. So the reason we have tickets is to just kind of govern a little bit of that. But you don't get charged if you're giving us feedback or if you're asking for a new feature. So And just as a background, maybe someone doesn't know the context of the question that was asked. We have a sister company named Frawala, which has a really, really nice HTML editor, the JavaScript editor, and integrating that into Sencha. We've done that. I guess we've done that for the classic toolkit, I believe, or the modern. We've done it for one of the toolkits, but not the other yet. So that's really what the question is asked. So, but great questions, but communicate with us. Let us know what you guys would like to see. That helps us in our future planning.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mark and Vajra here. I think we are just out of time for today's webinar. I would like to remind everyone today's webinar was recorded and you will be receiving a follow-up email with the link to the recording shortly. Once again, thank you for attending today's webinar and we look forward to joining us next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.